Here we go with another episode of Rethink Real Estate, guys. Gino Barbaro is who's going to be joining me today. Gino's got a very inspirational story about how he's come out of the restaurant industry. He took over his family restaurant, grinding on this hamster wheel that ultimately he couldn't get off or didn't think he ever could, and then started doing a little bit of real estate investing on the side. He's now grown that to a personal portfolio with his partner of over 1,700 doors. And it's a phenomenal story based on a couple of different things that I noticed in the episode and going through it with Gino. Is that one, Gino gives you the confidence that anybody can do this. And I'm not saying that, to disrespect Gino in any way whatsoever, because what him and his partner have done is absolutely tremendous. They not only have done it, they've documented their journey. They've written several books. They've got programs to help others now, because it's the pathway to financial freedom is what they see it. The anonymity that this process has given them financially has just opened up other avenues of their life so much. It's a really, really great story, coming from an Italian background, the Italian family pressuring to take over the family business, not to take a lot of risk at all, stay the course, do the same thing over and over again. And him to go against the family word and do this, and to come out on top is certainly something that I took out of it. Hopefully you enjoy it as well. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Gino, welcome to Rethink Real Estate. Thanks so much for being on.
Ben, I'm just thankful that I got on. That's all. I just turned the computer on and it worked. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Doing great. We had a few moments, folks, just so that you know, Gino and I have bonded over shit technology. Okay. So either way, Gino, thanks for jumping on. I'm fascinated with your story, fascinated with, scaling a portfolio of multifamily for well over 1,500 doors. I'm assuming that's the case. It might even be bigger now. But I'm just interested to hear from where you started to where you are now. Let's go through it.
It's 1,701. And scaling a portfolio is like scaling a family. I've got 6 kids. The very first one, you're like, what the hell did I get myself into? Where is the manual? There's no manual. Well, fortunately for Jake and Gino, we created a manual to buy multifamily, but there's no manual for kids. The second deal is like, okay, I'm understanding this, but it's really hard. I've still got my first one. The third kid is like, this is a lot of fun. I'm getting this. I'm getting the handle of this. It's costing me a lot of money. There's a lot of pain. And then on and on, the 4th child, 5th child, 6th child. And that's how my journey started in real estate. Early, long time ago. I was in the restaurant business. I had 2 immigrant parents, both from Italy. And in 1994, that's when I bought my restaurant with the family. And I operated it for about 20 years. But in 2007, that's where my crossroads came, Ben. And I said to myself, my father had just passed away. And I'm like, am I living his dream or am I living my dream? I wanted to scale a business. And the food business is so hard to scale when you've got an immigrant dad sitting there telling you, you've got to stay here. You got to do all the work. You can't. And it was great. That worked 40 years ago, but it didn't work in this economy. And when he passed away, it sucked. I read the book T. Harv Eker's Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. I'm like, okay, I'm doing everything wrong. I'm blaming everybody else. I need to take responsibility for my actions. And that's when I started the mentoring with the education and multifamily. I met Jake in 2009. We partnered up in 2011 because he moved to Knoxville, Tennessee. We were living in New York. And in 2013, after 18 months of struggling, not knowing what to do, we had that first child, 25-unit property in 2013.
Wow. Do you know what? I applaud the factor that you started in the restaurant business and now you've got, over 1,700 doors and in the multifamily space, but that that you've gone through this reimagination of yourself, because I'm assuming that, most people that are in a family business see it as, I'm not going to say easy money because it would depend on what business that you're in, but it's the consistent money where you're on this so-called hamster wheel that we discussed before, and that you're just going to keep doing it because it's right by the family or right by the legacy or whatever it may be. How did you turn yourself around? You mentioned a book, but what was that evolution of you moving through that process of changing?
There's a couple of images or stories that I love to share about that. The first one for me was my mom owned the building. She owned the restaurant. So I was paying her rent and she had 3 apartments on top. And there was one night and a Friday night that I'm sitting in the parking lot in New York. It's snowing. There's no one out. I'm actually throwing salt. I'm scraping the driveway. It's like 8 o'clock at night. It's pitch black. It's 20 degrees outside. I don't even have gloves. I'm so pissed off. And I look up and I see the light on one of the apartments. And it dawned on me. My mom is at home getting paid from that resident while I've worked all week and I've got Zippo. And it hit me. I'm like, I'm in the wrong business. I mean, I need to be in the multifamily business or any kind of rental business. That really, really I can still feel the cold. I can still feel the salt on my hands, throw it in the driveway. That really propelled me. That T. Harv Eker book I read soon after that. And I think the next, for me, evolution as far as personal development had to come with life coaching. I went out to become a certified life coach. And I did it because personal development, I wanted to grow. I'm like, why is everyone so successful here? Why are people having all these goals and doing all this stuff and being able to connect and have all this awareness when I don't? And I had to go out and I had to actually invest in becoming a life coach. And that was, to me, mind blowing. Things that I had never heard of, never seen before. Because when you're in the restaurant, in the kitchen, hiding, washing dishes, you're not having those amazing conversations. You're just talking to yourself. And that was what was frustrating to me, Ben. I'm letting my family down. I'm letting my kids down. And I knew that God created me for something more. I knew that He gave me two amazing parents. He gave me a great head start. And to me, at 38 years of age, I felt like I was all wasting my time and my life. And I really hated it. I really wanted to be a role model for my kids. And I felt like I was letting my family down.
That's so hard hitting for somebody that's listening to that now, that if they're in a spot at the moment. We had an episode on our podcast recently where we were speaking to a growth coach, where she was like, you've got to make a decision. Like, because there's so many people in real estate where a large chunk of our audience is, that are pissed off that they're in real estate. They're pissed off the marketplace isn't doing well. It's not as easy as it once was. I've got even agents that I've spoken to that are pissed off that they need to do open houses because the market's slow. It's like, that's your job. Like, really? Come on. But as it comes down to it, is that they haven't made a decision that regardless of what the marketplace is, I'm going to be in real estate. They haven't made that decision to be here, and they're going to do it regardless. So, as far as making a decision to then go into that multifamily space, I want to talk about that first deal. I want to talk about how you went about it. I want to talk about the emotion that went into it. I want to talk about then the progression to the scaling of that, because it's all good and well to do that first deal, but it's then that scaling element that then it has to provide you with enough financial gain that you can live from that. How did you do that? Did you keep the restaurant, do it on the side? Like, how did that work?
So I'm going to bring you back to life before Jake. And that was 2002. That was my very first deal. It was a 3-unit that we converted to a 4-unit, which was a nightmare. But think big, start small. All you got to do is just start. And I started in 2002. That was successful. The only problem is the success ended there for several years. In 2005, I met a guy named Maserati Mike. He drove a really beautiful gold Maserati, and he got me into a mobile home park deal. I crapped out on that deal. It wasn't because of him. Once again, it was my fault. I didn't vet out the deal. I didn't fly down. I didn't do my due diligence. The next deal, I did a strip mall, lost a lot of money on that deal. And at that point, I'm like a rabbit chasing that shiny object. I'm like, I have to stop and I have to focus. And that's when I became serious reading that book. I said, I need to double down. I need to, quote unquote, invest in my education. So I went out and I found mentorship with a couple of different groups, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, another apartment mentor out there. And then when I met Jake, I was like, Jake, I'll teach you about multifamily. He was the pharmaceutical rep. He was going out to doctors' offices, coming into our restaurant, taking food, and he was a legal drug rep, and it was great. I loved him because he was a hard worker. He was the opposite of Maserati Mike. He was not flashy. He had my core values. He was a hard worker. So I found the right person to actually partner. And when you say how I started in 2011, it did take us 18 months because Jake went down to a new market. We've got Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbaro in the heartland of Knoxville, Tennessee in 2011. Them times are a little different. You know what I mean? Y'all ain't doing business down here. We've heard that a lot early on, and that's the reality. But we kept on because I had that burning desire. All we wanted to do is to buy 100 units. We would have been thrilled. And I kept saying to Jake, we can scale up. You're doing your pharmaceutical job. You're driving around. We buy one property. That's all we need to do. Let's just buy one. Let's figure that out. And then when the next one comes, we can take down the next one, but let's do the first one. And our very first one was 25 units. I mean, can you imagine buying 25 contiguous units on one little parcel instead of buying 25 single family homes all over the place? For us, we could manage it part-time while working our jobs. And, for me, I didn't want to fix and flip. I had the restaurant. I wanted to do something that would create passive income. I wanted something that would give me a tax benefit. I wanted something where residents would pay down my expenses, right? May pay down my mortgage. And I wanted something that I could hold on for legacy wealth. And that's why, to me, multifamily made all the sense in the world. And ironically enough, after that very first deal, Rick Gentry, Big Ricky G, our broker on the first one, he liked us. He said, I got another deal for you guys. And that's how life works. You get in the game, you get your lumps, you figure it out. And then all of a sudden, the opportunity starts showing up because you put in the work on the first one, you executed. The second one came by 3 months after that. It was a 36-unit deal.
So how did you segue? Like at what point and what
Great
size?
question. Yes.
How did you segue?
Sorry, I forgot that. And in October of 2015, we had about 300 units. And I remember sitting in the shed in my restaurant. I have the cell phone jammed in my ear. I'm putting away these bags of flour. I'm putting away these pizza tins. It's basically $12 an hour work. And I am negotiating an $11 million seller finance deal with Jake. And I had to have the epiphany. I'm like, you're hiding again. You're in this shed. What the hell are you doing here hiding? You're negotiating the deal of a lifetime. You're wasting your time. And at that point, it was probably mid 2015. I made a decision when we closed this deal, I'm going to quote unquote have enough passive income. And if I don't, I know that I'll focus full time on the real estate that I'll be able to do it. So in October of that year, I said to my brother, Mark, it's time for me to leave. But what I'll do is I will wean myself. During the week, I'm in real estate full time. On Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll come and work at the restaurant. And I did that for 6 months. There's no reason to burn the bridges. There's no reason. You can take your time, be systematic, let your W-2, your business continue to fund your lifestyle, whereas you're building the business on the side here. Because Jake and I were able to continue to reinvest the profits from our real estate into it. And that's how we're able to refinance out millions of dollars and put it into the next deal and put it into the next deal. That's what allowed us to do it. So if you look at the timeline, 2013, we do our very first deal. October of 2015, I leave the restaurant for, during the week. And March of 2016, I just basically cut the umbilical cord. And that was 3 years. And it took me a little bit longer than Jake because at the time I'm living in New York. The expenses are higher. I've got 6 children, and I'm not going to lie to you, I was probably afraid. I didn't want to abandon my brother. I was using all these excuses. I still wanted to hide, but I knew in my heart of hearts that if I wasn't going to leave at that point, then I would never leave. So I took the leap. And the interesting thing, Ben, is what's the worst thing that could have happened if I crapped out? My wife even said to us, we'll go move into your mom's basement. We'll go live downstairs from her. We'll do whatever we need to do. But if you don't take this opportunity, you'll never know. And that's where most people are. They're afraid to lose. And if I did, I could always go back, open another restaurant, or go back to the restaurant that my brother owned and said, hey, please, I need some help. Hook me up.
I think that people are. Why do you think that people are so afraid of fear, Gino? Sorry, why are they so scared of or fearful of failure? Is what I meant to say. The failure element is just so ingrained, and like I've got to admit is that coming from a culture within Australia, I've been in North America now for 10 years, and we made a bet and came over here, and it's definitely worked out for us. But realistically, it was a little bit at the time though, it was a little bit more safer bet that we made. Like it made it easier for me to make that decision if I'm being honest with myself. It was within an umbrella that we knew, and we knew the people, and we sort of knew that we would be protected a little bit and all of that type of stuff that allowed us to do that. But that said, is that what do you think has ingrained us with this fear of failure or this stigma of failure? Because you're right. Let's say that shit did hit the fan with the multifamily. You come back, you know how to run a restaurant. You open a restaurant wherever you want to open that restaurant. So,
Yes.
so what do you think it is that really stops us?
Someone wrote this in a book, and I don't remember where I read it from, but people aren't afraid of change. They're afraid of not being prepared for the change. That's what ends up happening. And that's why it took me years to prepare myself. I didn't want to take that shot and not be ready. So I was actually doing a lot of work at the restaurant. I'd go in at 10 in the morning. I actually homeschooled the kids before I went at 10 o'clock. I would work from 10 to 2. I would sit down from 2 to 3. I would do that hour for the real estate. I'd go back on the line, cook from 5 to 9 o'clock, go home at night, and continue to work. And I had a very supportive spouse that really helped out a lot because she knew that, hey, you're in this all the way. I'm supporting you. And on the flip side, it put a lot of pressure on me because if she's going to give me the keys to the kingdom, I better put in the work and the effort. I think a lot of us are afraid is because we don't want to look silly. We don't want to look foolish. And we're always taught, as far as I was concerned, we have these limiting beliefs. It's one of our energy blocks. And I always heard from my mom, save for a rainy day. We have to stay small. Don't take risk. You've got 6 mouths to feed. Ben, I didn't tell my mom that I had 200 units with Jake. I didn't tell her anything until I was at the 200 unit mark, well into like 2.5 years of investing with Jake, because I know she would have said something that may have slowed me down. I didn't want to hear any of that. She's just trying to protect me, but at the same time, I knew that I needed to do it. So I think a lot of people, when you're out there and you're looking at your journey, it's okay to be afraid. The fear never really goes away. I think you're able to control it. I think you're able to make logical sense of it. I think just the emotion overwhelms people and they don't really deal with their emotions. Let that emotion sit with you. Because when you have that negative emotion really causes that low level of energy, that catabolic energy we talk about. When you're pumped up, you're getting off this podcast, you're energized, all of a sudden you're living in an anabolic state. You're ready to rock and roll. It's a completely different lifestyle. So if you're always in constant fear, we're conditioned to protect ourselves. So our body's conditioned to really shoot that cortisol out and to protect ourselves. Never in our existence up until 100 years ago, 200 years ago, were we out there saying, yeah, I'm looking for opportunity. You were just basically trying to survive, get some food, get some water, completely different shift. So your body, that physiology, your physical makeup is always looking for problems. And that's how we've been wired.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really to look back at what we were like and back in those times. It's like you're right. We weren't looking for opportunity. It's like, where am I going to eat tonight? Like that's do I have enough food for like a couple of days, so to speak?
Yes.
But
Yes.
So Gino, you've done a lot of promotional stuff around helping people scale their portfolios. Your business partner Jake as well. I wanted to talk about some of the key elements that I sort of did in some
Sure.
research leading into this. One of the questions that I've got here is, what is value-based decision making? So what is your philosophy around that?
For us, every time I had a problem with a partner, our values didn't align. So what I ended up doing was, and I challenge everyone listening to this, what are your values? Write down your values. Think about what your values are. And most people will say, yeah, but are you living by those values? And every time you make a decision or every time you set a goal, are you aligning yourself with those values? For me, I'm all about family. I wanted to leave the restaurant because I was working on the weekends. I was working on the holidays. So if my my value is family, spending time, and then I start this Jake and Gino gig and I'm away every weekend, great. I become a rock star. I become super successful. But when I'm successful, does that lead to real happiness? And does that lead to fulfillment? Probably not, because it's not aligning with my values. So when we're out there and we're selecting partners, we're selecting investors, we're selecting employees, it really comes down to values. And I didn't have that at the restaurant. That's why I only had one restaurant for 20 something years. But within 5 years, we scaled to about 1,500 units. Work on your core values, work on that mission statement. And for us, our core values at Jake and Gino is growth mindset, people first, unwavering ethics, extreme ownership, and make it happen. Those are our 5 core values that we live by. And every time we hire someone, every time we fire someone, they need to live by those, creating that culture for that organization. Because at the restaurant, every time something went wrong, it's always the employee's fault. It was never my fault. I never cast a vision. And when you're making these decisions in your life, whether you're partnering with somebody, whether you're going to invest in a deal, whether you're going to start a business, do they align with your values? Because we have these entrepreneurs out there that are creating these massive companies, but does that align with what their true purpose is, what their sole purpose is? They're doing these things subconsciously, unconsciously sometimes, but are they living by their values? If they are, then they're going to feel more accomplished, more fulfilled. And if they're not, they're going to keep growing and keep trying to grab at something that is eluding them because they're not living by the values that they have for themselves. Does
I
that
think
make sense?
it does make a lot of sense because a lot of people speak about values, but I don't think that they do it as practically as what you have as well. And actually, it's actually refreshing, Gino. To I can tell that you live your values. Like I don't know you and I don't know each other very well, but I can just tell that you do. I can tell that they're at the forefront of the decisions that you make. Like it's you haven't just done the exercise because a book told you to do the exercise.
It's a
You
lot of
actually
work.
have done the exercise and you keep bringing it up.
Yes. We actually had coaching on it. I mean, I love scaling up. When you talk about scaling up, when you're at 600 units, you're like, holy crap, what do we do here? Like, how are we going to buy another deal? Like, how much money are we making? Like, what's PPU, profit per unit? We didn't know any of these because we never did it before. So we started with EOS and traction, and then we used a company called Scaling Up. And our core values, they took 2 quarters to figure them out. We were whiteboarding them, I mean, it was really challenging because you want to really chunk them down and you really want them to be not just a marketing ploy, but listen, people first. I mean, if we need to get somebody else into an event and there's no room, I'm going to figure that out. That person comes first. So fleshing those out may take a little bit of time and a little bit of effort. But once again, I challenge you, if you don't do the work, it's even harder if you don't put the effort into it.
This is a little bit of an offhanded question, but I think oftentimes people get into the real estate game and the investment game for freedom, right?
Mhm.
But then when they achieve that freedom, they don't know what to do with that freedom. So, question to you is: do you think that people chase it for freedom? And secondly, what have you done with your freedom, or have you just used it to leverage more?
That's a great question. When I in 2017, I left New York. I moved to Florida, and I quote unquote really didn't have a job. And it was interesting. I moved to Florida because the portfolio is up in Tennessee. Jake's managing it, and I was going to buy properties in Florida in Jacksonville. And everyone told me, "Oh, the market's crazy." So I'm at a crossroads. I'm like, do I just retire and go to the beach, or do I just lean in and do Jake and Gino? And I'm not ready. I will never retire. That word is not even in my vocabulary. For 3 minutes, my wife was like, "Okay, what are we going to do now?" And I leaned into it, and I think when you're creating this passive income and you're creating this lifestyle, you really need to map out what that looks like for you. For me, I was just able to be able to lean into the education aspect of it. And I love the education aspect of it. And that's where I get my joy from it. And for Jake, he loves the property management side. And we're just continuing to grow it. And I think, Ben, one of the things that I always wanted to create was a company where people really wanted to work. They came to work, they knew the mission, they enjoyed the job, and they're able to invest in our deals. That's ultimately what I wanted to create. And that's part of the thing that financial freedom allows you to do. I wanted to be able to share the wealth that I have with my family, to be able to do things that I couldn't do beforehand. And I think if you think of it from that perspective, you get into real estate for all these benefits, but then you can create a lifestyle around the real estate. That's ultimately what you want to do. You want your lifestyle to be around the real estate. You can take a week off. You can go do your business anywhere. That's what I think the real estate will allow you to do. And I think one more point, what I think after reading the Psychology of Money book lends happiness to a lot of people is autonomy. Once you have financial freedom, you sort of have autonomy. You sort of have decisions on what you want to do. You want to work more? Great. You don't want to work? Great. I think that's what the real estate allows you to do. Once you become financially free, you have that autonomy where you can start making decisions based on, once again, what your values are.
I think that autonomy, that's such a great way to put it. Like just get yourself to the point where you do have the opportunity to go and get yourself incredibly bored. Like people think right now they want to be on the golf course. I guarantee you that that's a thought that's gone through my head. But I guarantee you that if I played more than 2 rounds of golf in a week, I'd be bored shitless. Like it'd be like, well, what am I doing here?
Isn't it
Like
the
it's
irony? But isn't it the irony? People like you and me, we work so hard to think we want to stop working, but that's not the reality. The people who don't work hard are the ones who want to stop working, and they'll never be able to stop working. The ones who actually achieve it are like, wow, game on. Money
yeah.
is the result. We're not chasing money anymore. We're chasing opportunity, and opportunity actually creates the result, which is money. It's such a weird, counterintuitive concept that if somebody told me that 20 years ago, I'm like, what's that guy smoking? But that's the reality. The reality is if you've made it, all of a sudden you've gotten good. You're playing with house money now. Why would you stop now? When you've created all this success and you've created all this stuff, now it's time to start creating some impact along with the success that you've created.
And I want to talk about the impact because you mentioned something there, having your employees invest in deals with you guys and things along those lines. I want to talk about the logistics of your company quickly. I want to
Sure.
talk about like just the infrastructure things from a practicality perspective. Somebody listening, I always love the terminology of reverse engineering something. So I'm going to take Jake and Gino's business. They're doing over 1,700 doors. What does that team, what does that business look like from an operational perspective so that I can reverse engineer it down to property number one?
Absolutely. So when we first started out, it was Jake Stenziano riding the lawnmower, Jake Stenziano collecting the rents, Gino Barbaro doing the bookkeeping. That lasted for 2 deals. On the third deal, we had scaled to 200 units. On average, each one of our offices, a property manager, an assistant, and 2 to 3 maintenance techs can handle around 200 multifamily units on
Okay.
average. So if we've got 1,800 units, we've got between 8 and 9 offices in the Knoxville area broken up into 200 units. On average, when we hit the 500 unit mark, we needed the regional manager to be able to be a regional over that 500 unit portfolio. We waited a little too long for that because we're not the smartest tools in the shed, but that's what you learn. At 1,000 units, we got our second regional. At about 1,200 units, we got a COO of the company, and then we're at the 1,500. So we've got 3 regionals, we've got the COO, and we got Jake really running the property management. And we've got around 80 employees on the property management side at this scale. So if you're looking at a deal, on average, if you're buying a 100-unit property, you're probably going to need a property manager, an assistant property manager, and on average, maybe 2 maintenance techs, depending on how much work is included in the property. But the problem is people are getting overwhelmed. Like, I can't think about it. All you need to do is when you start, you'll see the natural progression. Those first couple small deals, you may have to put in a lot more work. And that's the tough part about being an entrepreneur, because it's the I'm a mentality. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But
Yeah.
I'm going to start getting burned out at about 100 units. And when you think you need to hire a bookkeeper or an editor or a copywriter, it's already way too late. You should have already done it before. So before you're doing that. So at around the 70 to 80 unit mark, you're already thinking, hey, I need someone to help me with the property management. Hey, I need a maintenance tech. Hey, I need a landscaping company. Whereas most people tend to want to continue to do it themselves. That's when you start saying to yourself, I'm starting to scale. I'm starting to put some equity in these properties. Let me focus on the real value, the equity of all these assets, and farm away the dishwashing, those menial jobs that you can get anybody else to do. Whereas most of us, when we start out, that's all we know. And then we get to a certain point. If you don't get that scaling up coaching, you'll lose what you're trying really to create, which is a
Yeah.
scalable company.
Yeah, well, I think that I'm just a little bit of a dawning moment as you're talking about it. It's actually one of the things that I think that most people only get to a certain size of their portfolio, and they
Yes.
don't give up the growth. They just get comfortable with it because they've gotten to that point where they just want to live off that income, and they don't want to reinvest it into the team structure so that they don't have to
Yes.
do anything. Because then they're like, well, one, what would I do? What would I live off? And they're not willing to sort of hand it off, so to speak. They want to create a job for themselves, Gino, versus
Yes.
versus build it. Does that make
And
sense?
isn't that an ego thing too? Because
Mm,
I can do it better than anybody else. And to me, I think multifamily is a team sport. I've said that from when I started. There are so many opportunities and different functions in a multifamily business. Are you raising capital? Are you operating the deal? Are you asset managing the deal? I mean, there's so many different functions. And for me to be able to scale, you want to start pulling yourself out of those jobs you don't like and start finding the ones you do like. And that's what I'm talking about, the financial freedom. You've built it. And what I like is you don't have to do 1,000 units a year. If you do 1 or 2 good deals a year, that's all you need. You look back 5 years from now, you're like, wow, I've accumulated 300 units. Where did that come from? And then it's like, oh, your world will be completely changed. But I like the fact that you say that. Most of us don't want to give up what we're doing because we think we're too smart. We think we're the best ones at it. My father included. No one can wash dishes like you, Gino. You know what I'm saying? No one can make that chicken parm like you. I got news for you, Dad. A lot of people making chicken parm better than me, and a lot of people can wash dishes better than me. But that's the mindset. That's the unfortunate thing that holds us back.
yeah, that's so good. I do want to end the podcast on. I really want to ask you about restaurants and stuff, and maybe you've got
Sure.
PTSD and you don't like to go into them. I'm not sure, but I just want to want to talk about quickly going back into the infrastructure conversation when it comes down to the way that you guys have structured your company. Who helped you come up with that structure? Like you guys, the thing that I'm applauding and the thing that I think that a lot of people can actually resonate with is that obviously you and Jake had never done this, and you guys have just learnt as you've gone across, and that's a great deal of what like the real estate industry is the one that I'm the most familiar at, is that I'm the CEO of a real estate company. I'm really just a dumb real estate agent that sold homes. Like I don't have any clue. I've had to self-teach myself the corporate structure of how to grow a business. At the end of the day, we're just real estate people that end up in these positions that have no right to be. How did you guys learn? How did you guys go through that? I know you mentioned coaching. How did you put that infrastructure in? How did you learn about all of that?
Well, there's a phrase that a lot of our sales team says: it's either pay to play or seek to serve. I don't have the time to seek to serve. I had to pay for the knowledge. And then I also had a really good mentor. We were involved with a gentleman named Rick Sapio. He had a brand called the 100-Year Real Estate Investor, the 100-Year brand. And he was really great. He was talking about his holding company. He was talking about all these different structures. And that's what I learned from. I learned from Rick. It's getting in the weeds and finding other people who've done it before you. And there's a lot of people who are older who are willing to share. I mean, if you're going to bring value to them and you help them out, I mean, we started a company together. Unfortunately, we had to shut it down a few months ago. Didn't work out. But I learned so much from Rick about holding companies, about different structures. Each one of our deals is in a different LLC. Each one, I mean, whether it's a Jake and Gino, the education, and each individual property. Now we're working on estate planning, and it happens just slowly, organically. But I think entity protection and asset, that's the first thing that you need to tackle. And don't go on LegalZoom, please. Don't. There's two things you don't cheap out on.
Thank you.
Yes, you don't cheap out on legal and you don't cheap out on CPA. Get yourself a good CPA and get yourself good legal, because they will guide you. I was fortunate in 1994. The only thing that I got out of that restaurant that was good was my accountant. I still have him to this day from that. I've grown with him. He's been another amazing mentor. Every time I ask him a question, he's got the knowledge. But do not use accounting and legal as a commodity. It's not who does it for the cheapest price or the best price. It's who can save you the most money and who's going to bring you the most value. I hope that answers the question.
That's really good advice. No, I appreciate that. But the other part of this that I'm wondering, and you may be just a quick no answer, but did you have any near death experiences with the business, like when you were building all of this, that did something went wrong from an insurance perspective, or in a deal, or a deal that went bad that ultimately could have sort of just like ended the whole real estate space for you?
That's a excellent question. With Jake, not really. We started out very conservative. We had the buy right, the manage right, the finance right. We had that process. Now, myself, back in 2006 and 7, when I bought that strip mall after the failed Maserati Mike deal, I owned that deal for 10 years. I lost a lot of money in that deal. I was just fortunate that I was able to hold on. I had good financing, so my debt never reset. So I was able to hold on, because you can always buy real estate. You can't always sell it, but you can always buy it. And I was able to weather the storm on that. And for me, I don't want to call it near death. Losing money is one thing, but losing bandwidth, losing time, dealing with a property that's not going to pay you for years on end. Please, I want everyone to hear this. No deal is better than a bad deal. Trust me, pass on the deals. If they don't make sense, if they don't fit your criteria, don't force the deal. And that's what's been happening for the last couple of years. It's buy right. The manage right is the wheel of the wheelbarrow, constant motion, and it's finance right. This bridge debt is going to kill a lot of people over the last couple of years. They've been buying stuff on bridge. We want long-term fixed rate financing. We'll work with community banks with at least 5-year terms, because 2 years to turn 180 units during a pandemic, when you have shortages and you have labor shortages, you're running the risk of your debt expiring. And that's what's going on right now. This month in October, there's billions of dollars of debt that's coming due right now. And we'll see what happens. There's opportunity. A lot of people are going to lose assets, but there's a lot of opportunity for people who are sitting there waiting for this stuff to happen.
Yeah, because I like it. This is a beautiful segue, because this is where I really wanted to sort of round this whole episode out, was in the perspective of what you think the market is doing. We're filming this in October, at the very beginning of October. And as you said, that there's a great deal of the leverage debt that is obviously resetting at the moment, where a lot of people are wondering where the supply of the real estate market is going to come from over the next number of years. I think it's coming from the multifamily space, definitely, because I have to admit, like you look at your portfolio, Gino, and how long you've been doing this. You guys have probably had some some really great financing periods where you've paid down a lot of debt. You guys
Yes.
are in a really distinct opportunity where you can take advantage of situations like this. But
Mhm.
but 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 I've got to be honest. Over the last 3 or 4 years, myself included in some multifamily space stuff, is that it was this hot topic sort of cool word that got thrown around so often that there are more people entering the multifamily space than ever before. But I think those people that have gotten into it over the last 3, 4 years, maybe shorter periods of time, they're going to be up for a very rough road with debt restructuring coming up here in the near future.
Ben, don't be hating on multifamily because that's not the only word that was being bandied around. Do you remember RV parks? RV parks were like the rage,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like self storage. And
Self-storage. Oh, you're so right. Self-storage, yes.
mobile home parks. No offense, I don't want to own a 1928 mobile home park. Numbers look great, everything. I just don't want to be in that space with the resident base. They're tearing them down. Nothing wrong with it. It's a great space for affordable housing. But I think all sectors of real estate were thrown around, and now we're going to see office and retail. Those are the first ones that are really going to crack, I think, and it's just going to help. It's going to hurt the credit markets. And I wrote a book on seller financing, looking for it. Seller financing. We already done a deal this year with seller financing. We had another deal in the contract that did not go through that had a nice seller financing component. So I think the opportunity for those of us that have been waiting I've been looking at deals going, how are they making this deal work? Well, they didn't make the deal work. That's
Yeah.
why. And I passed on those deals. We could have gotten into a couple of deals that were a little risky, but we said, you know what? Let's not, because it's for the long term. We're going to be in this business hopefully the next 20 to 30 years. Let's not take risk that's not necessary. And I just had experience. I'm not smarter than anybody else. I just went through the cycle previously in '08 and '09. I saw what happened there. I just think multifamily, if you own it right now and your financing's okay, you're going to be able to weather the storm. Because I don't personally don't see rents dropping 20 to 30% unless you're in a market like New York or San Fran. But those rents are high to begin with. But Knoxville, Tennessee, there are people moving there. There's a dislocation where there's not enough supply there.
Yeah.
So at the very least, it's going to stay where it is. And financing, when rates do go back down the next 18 months to 24 months, people are going to refinance and they're going to lock up good debt. It's just getting through the storm. Can you pay your debt coverage? Can you pay the nut? And for us, passing on a lot of deals, it was painful because you're seeing all these people putting these deals on the contract and all these syndicators coming in all flush with cash, and you're like, that's not going to end well. But you don't know when. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it happens. And I think we're seeing the first cracks right now. And next year in October, same thing. There's going to be another huge surge of debt that's coming due as well. So just be careful. Buy right, manage right, and finance right. Really, that's the three pillars. And you can take that model to any type of real estate, whether you're doing self-storage, whether you're buying mobile home parks. Once again, I'm not going to hate on the RV park, but when that fad dies, what happens? You're going to have so many RV parks that are built. I think it's expensive to RV park. I mean, you got to buy an RV for 200 grand, then you got to spend $200 a night. I'd rather go to a hotel personally. I mean, I don't know. I don't see the attraction in it. I mean, like that's a space that was trendy, and now RVs are down 50% as far as like the pandemic. That's one of those things where everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. Stay in your lane. If you're an RV operator, stay in that lane. Don't keep jumping from one asset class to the next asset class. Understand the asset class. So when there is a dip, you'll be like, oh, wow, great. I can see the opportunity. Let me jump right in.
A couple of years ago, we decided to get an RV and sort of do the coast of California. Oh shit! I'll never own an RV. I want to be clear.
Unless it's a self-driving RV, I'm all in for it. I am not driving that thing. There's no way. A vacation for me is going to a beach, going to a hotel, having somebody cook for me. I am not showering and eating in a van. I'm just that's Gino, and that sounds like it's Ben also.
Someone said to me, I literally on Monday of this week, I went to lunch with someone. They're like, "Oh, we've got a beach house in Santa Barbara." I'm like, "Oh, that sounds amazing. You have to come." I'm like, "Oh, great, excellent." And then the husband, who I love to death, his name's Alex Duke, and shout out to him, is that he goes to me, No. You guys can stay in the beach house. I don't want to make my own bed and shit. Okay, no way. There's no. We've got to cook. No. It's like, oh god. Now, so Gino, just sort of rounding this out. I sort of want to go away with a few things. I want to talk about just a little bit of if you're talking to the person that's on the other end of this podcast that's listening, going, shit, man, Gino's got it like pretty made. It's pretty set. That's that decision that he's made. I want to be in the same position as he is. I want that autonomy that that you probably have had the opportunity to have and to grow this business. Where do they start? What are the first, like, if you were going to give 5 things that they need to do over the next, in the implementation game over the next 6 months, 12 months, whether it be learning, all of that type of stuff. I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about your books and how that might help, because you guys have published a hell of a lot of books as well that definitely could help people in their journey.
Ben, I think the first thing that people need to understand is if they're in the real estate space, they're already in the best business. They already are where they need to be to where they need to go. I was a pizza guy. I wasn't in the right business. Jake was selling pharmaceuticals. He was selling vaccines and fish oil. So we had no idea. You listening, you know the power of real estate. What I think you need to do is, if you want to get into commercial or any other asset class, start listening to those kinds of podcasts. Start going to meetups in multifamily. Start going to events in multifamily. Start talking to people who are syndicating deals. Start talking to investors who are already investing in multifamily, and see the mind shift. I think that's the most powerful thing I could tell anybody to do, is start immersing yourself in whatever space it is. If you want to go to self-storage, start talking to brokers who are in the self-storage space. Start looking at deals. And it's incredible because you're already buying and selling real estate. You already know the mechanics of it. You already know the power of it. You already have people on your list who are buying and selling homes. You have capital at your fingertips and you don't even know it, because I'm will guarantee you someone on this listening to me is saying, I don't have the money to get into multifamily. That's a bunch of nonsense, because if a pizza guy who's got 27 grand can scratch together that with his partner and get a creatively financed deal on their first deal, then you can do it. You just had somebody sell a home for 800 grand. They got 300 grand sitting in the bank. Well, guess what? Once you learn the skill, you want to invest with me, Mr. Person I just sold it. They trust you. They know you already. There's capital all over the place. The money is not the block. It's right here. That's what holds us back. And I think the mindset, working on yourself, the personal development, my mentors that I had listened to 20, 25 years ago, Zig Ziglar, I love Zig. Jim Rohn, I love Jim. Tony Robbins, all those guys, I would listen to them daily. And now I'm actually out there, I'm podcasting them. Dean Graziosi, all these guys that I would listen to, I'm actually interviewing now. It's just how life comes full circle. But you need to start listening to those positive messages. You need to start listening to people who have success. Don't listen to people who have never invested in a deal tell you real estate's risky. How would they know? They've never invested in real estate as being risky. To them, it is risky because they don't have the skill set and they don't have the education. To us who are in the business already, we know the power of real estate.
So Gino, from a resource perspective, then you obviously have got some podcasts that you're part of, and then also some books and things along those lines. Let's round it out with that. But I still have questions about restaurants and pizza. Okay, just hear me out. Okay, but like, where do they go to listen to you? Because I have to admit, you are a very warm person within a space that I believe is full of ego. Like there's these people, I will remain nameless, but it's just so ego driven. I think that I can see that you're genuine in what you want to do and help people with the journey that you've been on. So what books should they look at? What are your books you've got? What podcasts can they listen to you on, and how do they get in touch?
Before I pitch myself, I'd like to pitch another company that really helped me early on in my journey. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners know it. It's Bigger Pockets.
Oh, yeah.
I started listening to them in 2012, 2013. I got to know Josh. I got to know Brandon Turner. And I've been on their podcast 3 times. And what I love about their podcast is their platform is they have different niches. They have single family, they have multifamily, they have commercial. So start there. Start listening to their podcast. Start on their platform. I love their platform. But then take it a step further. Go to the Jake and Gino website, jakeandgino.com. We've written 5 or 6 books. I have a how-to podcast on multifamily. We've got the Jake and Gino. I do a podcast with my wife called the Julia and Gino Show, because it's to me, it's about relationships, it's about family, it's about creating deeper connections. And I love the show with my wife. But just go on there and start reading the material there and take a deep dive and have an open mind. Don't think you can't do multifamily because it's only for the big guys and it's only for the REITs. I'm telling you, it is possible. If a pizza guy and a drug rep can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice. But now let's lead into the part of this. I've got I've got an affection for New York. Okay, I do. I don't. Just me being an Aussie, I really do. I love the West Village and all of that stuff, Manhattan specifically. But tell me some of the restaurants that we need to go to that are some of your favorites. Like
I mean,
anywhere.
I'm not a city guy, but for me, if you can find a restaurant that has real Neapolitan pizza with the 00 flour, that I would always go. I would always go to that. And I know if you're in California, you're in San Diego, man, you guys in San Diego have got some amazing sushi restaurants. The Thai restaurants there. I mean, my mom heard me. She'd just blasphemy in Italian talking about Thai food. Were you nuts? But I mean, love Thai food. Even the Korean places. I mean, like I'll eat anything. I love anything that's fresh. I mean, the farm to table. I love farm to table. That was my dream, Ben. My dream was to create a company called Gino's Family. I had a garden in my backyard. I would grow vegetables with my kids. I'd pick them, pull them, bring them into my house, and I would cook them with my kids on video, showing people the power of being able to cook food with your family and sitting down around the dinner table. So for me, that conjures so many great memories. And when I go into a restaurant, it really is getting around the dinner table and trying to eat anything wholesome. Please stay away from the fast food.
Yeah.
Neapolitan. Go to the Neapolitan Italian restaurants. I
There
love
you go.
them. Yes.
Gino,
Yes.
you've been an absolute pleasure to have on as a guest. Thank you so much for being so open and honest with everything that you've done. Congratulations on the transformation and everything that you've achieved. Thanks for joining us on Rethink Real Estate.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.